At the time when we have very little sugar left in the bloodstream, insulin is still around, it's still attached to our fat cells, and we can't break down fat into free fatty acids. We can't release any energy into the blood. Okay? Our fat is a battery. Okay? It takes in sugar, stores the energy as fat, and when we need it, it releases the energy. But with insulin present between meals and relatively low sugar, we're stuck. We can't release fat. We can't get any energy. So we're tired and hungry. So if you're a good red-blooded American, you have a donut and a cup of coffee, right? And what does that do? Sends the blood sugar screaming up. Or maybe you have rice cakes in your drawer like a lot of secretaries do, the all-American diet food, very high glycemic, tremendous effect on blood sugar. So blood sugar levels go screaming up. The pancreas says, oh, I'm back on. I have to make more insulin, take care of that blood sugar. So insulin levels go up. There you are again, high sugar, high insulin. All our cells open their channels. Sugar rushes from the blood to the cells. Level of sugar in the blood once again plummets. Pancreas can take a break, stops making insulin. Insulin levels drop slowly once again. There you are again, low sugar, high insulin. Very little energy from your blood sugar, high insulin, blocking fat burning, unable to get energy from your battery. So what do? Maybe now it's lunchtime, so you go for a plate of pasta, half a loaf of bread, iced tea with sugar. Up goes the blood sugar. Back up goes the insulin. Now you can see how your day is unfolding. So you get these big swings in sugar. Insulin never quite comes down, because every time it starts to come down, you're tired and hungry from low sugar and high insulin, and you're forced to eat again, or you're tempted to eat again. Now, there are several problems with this. Number one, you've got these big swings in energy that can really wreck your day. Mid-morning, loss of productivity, have to eat something. Mid-afternoon, put the head down on the desk and fall asleep for 10 minutes, you know. But worse than that, when your blood sugar basically goes above this line, which is all this time, all this time, and all this time, you're glycating at a much faster rate. Remember glycation, the attachment of sugar to protein, inflammation, cellular damage, degenerative disease. So you're promoting degenerative disease at a much faster rate than you would be if your blood sugar were down here. Also, your insulin levels, by virtue of never coming down, are also increasing oxidative stress and promoting degenerative disease. Remember, high insulin levels are associated with central obesity, high blood pressure, abnormal cholesterol profile, atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, early heart attacks and strokes, and possibly a number of other diseases. So what we really want to do is behave in a way or eat in a way that we can keep our blood sugar very low and our insulin very low. So let's change the day. Let's say instead of the cereal and yogurt breakfast, we had a 4-egg omelet with a couple slices of low-fat cheese or non-fat cheese and a bunch of chopped vegetables. Put a little olive oil on it. Okay? Sound all right?
Sounds great.
What happens is your blood sugar, instead of doing this, it does this. Okay? Now, your pancreas no longer has to make this much insulin. It only has to do this with the insulin. Okay? The relatively low level of insulin causes just some of our channels to open up to sugar, so there's a gradual flow of sugar from the blood into the cell, which allows the blood sugar to drop slowly, which parallels the curve by which insulin drops, allowing insulin time to catch up. When they bottom out together, at the time of day when we're getting very little energy from our sugar, our insulin level is low. So we don't have insulin here at the fat cell. We're free to break down fat into free fatty acids and deliver those free fatty acids into the blood. What happens? We have plenty of energy, we're more productive, we're not hungry, we don't think about snacking. We get some more work done in the morning, and a little bit later on, we go to lunch, we have a piece of chicken and a salad. Okay, blood sugar does this again. Insulin level, again, doesn't have to go screaming up, it only has to parallel the blood sugar. A relatively low level of insulin allows the sugar to drop slowly, allowing the insulin time to catch up. Once again, they bottom out together. There's no insulin at the fat cell between meals, and we're able to release body fat into free fatty acids. And our kidney and liver and muscle cells have plenty of energy to live on. So once again, we're not tired or hungry. We have a productive afternoon. And we go home that evening and we have a nice piece of salmon and a couple servings of broccoli, and we do it again. So in the evening, with this same scenario of no insulin around, we're not hungry and we don't snack. We have much less tendency to snack in the evening. So we go to bed with low blood sugar, low insulin, which allows us to burn fat all night long while we're sleeping. So you wake up in the morning, your pants fit a little better, you feel good, and you make another omelet. More important than losing weight, which is a wonderful thing, is at this level of glucose and insulin, you're glycating very slowly, and your insulin levels are low, so your insulin is not promoting the level of degenerative disease that it promoted up here. And you probably live 10 or 15 years longer. Now, we're not just expanding the last 10 or 15 years of life so you can make it in a nursing home another 5 years. We're extending your productive years, your healthy years, because we're preventing disease. With me?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, now that you understand it, what we need to do now is basically give you a list of foods that do this, and by eliminating those foods from your universe, you can basically live down here. Basically, we've got all sweets, I'm sorry to tell you, all starches, which include everything from grains, bread, rice, also potatoes, pasta, cereal, chips, crackers, and similar snack foods. There are only 3 vegetables on the list: corn, beets, and carrots. Corn is a starchy vegetable. Beets and carrots are rather sweet. If you've ever had carrot juice, it's almost as sweet as soda pop.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, high in sugar. Now, there are lots of fruits that aren't on this list, so don't let the large list of fruits scare you too much. The fruits you should avoid: bananas, kiwi, pineapple, papaya, mangoes, all types of melon, cantaloupe, honeydew, watermelon, dried fruits, like, well, any dried fruits really except apricots, particularly raisins, are high glycemic. Apricots are the one exception because they're so low in sugar to begin with. All fruit juice should be avoided. Now, there are lots of fruits that are not on this list, just so you don't panic: apples, oranges, peaches, nectarines, tangerines, plums, berries of all types. The other high glycemic beverage is beer. Beer has a glycemic index of about 110 compared to sugar, which is 100. Now, I used the word glycemic index, and I didn't really explain that. Let me give you a little background on that. For decades, we've been telling diabetics to eat complex carbohydrates. Well, that was and we've been telling people for weight loss to eat complex carbohydrates. That was the wrong thing to do, because many of the foods on this list you'll recognize as complex carbohydrates. Well, what we found out in the last 5 years or so is that many of these carbohydrates are digested so rapidly that they contribute to a strong, rapid rise in blood sugar, not much different from eating sugar. And the way they found this out was they took healthy fasting people, and they got up in the morning, and they fed them 50 grams of glucose. And they measured the rise and fall of blood sugar over time, and they plotted the curve. Then they measured the area under the curve, and they arbitrarily assigned that area the number 100 to start the index. The next day, they gave them 50 grams of baked potato, and they plotted the change in blood sugar over time and measured the area under that curve, and relative to the area that was measured for sugar, they assigned it a number relative to 100. So baked potato came out at about 85. Not too much different from sugar, complex carbohydrate. Next day, they measured white bread, 95. Okay, so they continued to do this until they virtually did all the carbohydrates. Broccoli, for example, 30. So tremendous health difference between eating broccoli, which, by the way, is loaded with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, versus a piece of bread. Both the same amount of calories, but a huge difference in what happens to your blood sugar, your insulin levels, your physiology, and the aging process. We now have an index of carbohydrates, glycemic index, measuring them from almost 0. Most of the better ones are around 20 to 40, up to even 120. Rice cakes, I mentioned earlier, 120 on the glycemic index. You're better off eating a bowl of sugar. Beer, 110 on the glycemic index. So to the extent that you can eliminate these, and nobody's perfect, and we all cheat now and then, but the object of the game is to do this most of the time. And when you have a little excursion off this nutrition plan, it'll have much less effect on your lifespan if you do it rarely. But to nibble away at a little bit of some of these foods every day is a much bigger mistake. I'd rather see you be really good for a week and then have one evening where you take a break and enjoy some of these foods. But we don't want you limiting yourself to one of the foods and eating it every day, because it doesn't matter which one you eat, it's going to raise your sugar and insulin levels. Okay? Now, you're going to meet with our nutritionist in a few minutes, and she's going to go over a lot more detail and give you the glycemic indices of a bunch of different foods. But if you ever get tired of all the detail and you just want the most simplistic way of looking at it, this list of foods to avoid, I think, will come in handy for you.
I don't see peanuts on the list.
You don't, and if it's not on the list, it's okay. Peanuts are high in fat and they're high in protein, and they're relatively low in carbohydrates. So they're actually a very healthy food, primarily because the fat in peanuts, which is a monounsaturated fat, omega-9 fatty acid, are healthy fats. They actually help raise the HDL, or the good cholesterol. So peanuts are fine.
Well, I see all the things I can't eat. What can I eat?
Ah, good question, Tony. Basically, there are lots of foods left to eat. What we want you to focus on are things like fish, primarily, vegetables, meat, lean cuts of meat, primarily chicken and turkey, but you can have red meat. Just make sure it's well trimmed. And you want to limit red meat and cheese, which are relatively high in saturated fat, to about 4 or 5 servings a week, but you definitely don't have to eliminate them. Vegetables, nuts, vegetables, fruits, vegetables. Did I mention vegetables? The hormone supplementation is extremely important. The exercise is extremely important and interacts with the diet, obviously, because exercise, again, lowers glucose, lowers insulin levels. And I didn't mention exercise promotes adrenaline, and adrenaline goes right to the pancreas and shuts off insulin. So exercise is a huge component in keeping glucose and insulin levels low and slowing down the aging process. But the synergy between the exercise, the diet, and the hormones is tremendous. So I want you to take the diet to heart and take the exercise to heart going forward. This is not just about hormones, but the synergy among the three to get you the best possible benefit.
Thank you, Doctor.